A billionaire never thought his twin girls could smile again, until he saw his maid doing this. Alexander Matthews stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline without really seeing it. At 35, he had everything the world told him he should want: a billion-dollar tech empire, a mansion in the Hamptons, another in Beverly Hills, cars that cost more than most people's homes, and influence that extended into nearly every major industry. But none of it mattered anymore. 9 months ago, his world had shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The day that should have been the happiest of his life, the birth of his twin daughters, Emma and Lily, had become the darkest. His wife, Catherine, had developed complications during delivery. The doctors had tried everything, but in the end, they'd had to make an impossible choice. They'd saved the babies, but Catherine had slipped away, leaving Alexander holding 2 tiny, fragile lives while his own felt like it was ending. The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, baby bottles, diapers, and a grief so profound it threatened to swallow him whole. His assistant handled his business affairs while he stumbled through the motions of being a father. He hired the best nannies money could buy, but none of them lasted more than a few weeks. It wasn't that they were incompetent. Alexander simply couldn't bear to see anyone else caring for his daughters when their mother should have been there. The twins had Catherine's eyes, bright blue and searching. Every time Alexander looked at them, he saw the woman he'd loved since college, and the pain was almost unbearable. He provided for them, of course. They had the finest nursery, the most expensive clothes, imported organic formula, and every toy a baby could possibly need. But there was something missing, something he couldn't give them no matter how much money he spent. His mother, Margaret, had noticed it first when she'd visited last week. "Alexander, darling," she'd said gently, watching him mechanically feed Emma while Lily fussed in her crib. "When was the last time you heard them laugh?" The question had struck him like a physical blow. He'd stood there, bottle in hand, trying to remember. Had they ever laughed? Babies were supposed to laugh, weren't they? But all he could remember from the past 9 months was crying, theirs and his own, late at night when no one could hear him. "They're fed, they're clean, they're healthy," he'd replied defensively. "What more can I do?" His mother had placed a wrinkled hand on his arm. "Love them, Alexander. Not just as their provider, but as their father." Catherine wouldn't have wanted this, you going through the motions like a robot, the girls growing up in this mausoleum of grief. She was right, of course. The mansion had become exactly that, a beautiful, expensive tomb where 3 people existed, but didn't really live. After she left, Alexander had tried. He'd picked up Emma and attempted to play peekaboo, something he'd seen in a parenting video. But his heart wasn't in it, and babies could sense that. Emma had just stared at him with those devastating blue eyes, and he'd given up. That's when his mother had intervened more directly. She'd called him 2 days ago with a solution she'd arranged, without his permission. "I've hired someone new to help with the girls," she'd announced. "Her name is Sophia Martinez, and she starts tomorrow. And before you say no, Alexander, just give her 1 week. 1 week. If you're not satisfied, I'll never interfere again." Alexander had been too exhausted to argue. Another nanny would come, fail to connect with the girls, and leave. It was the pattern, and he'd grown numb to it. Sophia had arrived yesterday morning, and Alexander had barely looked at her during their brief introduction. 28 years old, his mother had said, with experience in early childhood development and stellar references. She had kind brown eyes and a warm smile that had annoyed him immediately. How dare she smile in this house where smiling had died? He'd given her the standard speech, the girls' schedule, their feeding times, medical information, the pediatrician's contact information. She'd listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and then done something unexpected. She'd asked about Catherine. "Would you tell me about their mother?" Sophia had asked softly. "I'd like to know about her if you're comfortable sharing. I think it's important for the girls to grow up knowing who she was." Alexander had frozen. None of the other nannies had asked. They'd tiptoed around the obvious absence in the home, treating Catherine's memory like something dangerous. But this young woman with the earnest eyes was asking him to talk about his wife, and something about her genuine interest had cracked something inside him. He'd found himself showing her the photo on his desk, Catherine laughing at their wedding, her eyes sparkling with joy. He'd told Sophia about how they'd met in a coffee shop near Columbia University, how Catherine had accidentally spilled her latte on his laptop, how that disaster had turned into coffee dates and then dinner dates and eventually a life together. He'd talked for 20 minutes, the most he'd spoken about Catherine to anyone since the funeral, and when he'd finished, there were tears in Sophia's eyes. "She sounds like she was an amazing person," Sophia had said. "And those little girls are so lucky to have her as their mother, even if their time together was short. We'll make sure they know her, Mr. Matthews. I promise." That had been yesterday. Now, standing in his office trying to focus on quarterly reports, Alexander found his mind drifting to the mansion where Sophia was with his daughters. He glanced at his watch, 3 in the afternoon. The twins should be up from their nap by now. He wondered how Sophia was managing. The silence of his office felt oppressive suddenly, and he made an impulsive decision. He was going home early. Alexander's driver pulled up to the mansion at 3:15. The October sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn, and fallen leaves skittered across the circular driveway. As he walked toward the front entrance, briefcase in hand, Alexander heard something that made him stop dead in his tracks. Laughter. Not just any laughter, the pure, unbridled giggling of babies. High-pitched, joyful, and utterly unrestrained. The sound was so foreign to his home that for a moment, he thought it might be coming from a neighbor's house, carried on the autumn breeze. But no, it was definitely coming from inside. His heart began to pound. Moving as quietly as possible, he eased open the front door and followed the sound. It was coming from the sunroom, the bright, plant-filled space that Catherine had loved, that he'd avoided for 9 months because it hurt too much to be there without her. Alexander stood in the doorway, completely transfixed by what he saw. Sophia was sitting cross-legged on a soft blanket spread across the hardwood floor, and both Emma and Lily were propped up against cushions in front of her, their eyes locked on her with absolute fascination. Sophia had her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a soft yellow sweater, casual, comfortable, so different from the starched uniforms the previous nannies had worn. And then, Sophia was saying in an animated voice, her hands moving expressively. The little bunny said, "But Mr. Bear, those are your ears. And do you know what Mr. Bear did?" She paused dramatically, and Alexander watched his daughters actually lean forward slightly, as if hanging on her every word. Sophia suddenly put her hands up to her ears and wiggled them ridiculously, making a surprised face. He said, "Oh, my. How did those get up there?" Emma's face split into a huge, gummy smile, and she burst into peals of laughter. A second later, Lily joined in, her little hands clapping together in delight. The sound of their synchronized giggles filled the sunroom, and Alexander felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 9 months suddenly cracking open. Sophia continued her silly story, making exaggerated expressions and funny voices. She wasn't just going through the motions or following some childcare manual. She was genuinely, completely present with his daughters, playing with them like they were the most important people in the world. And they were responding to her in a way they'd never responded to anyone, not even to him. Again, Sophia said cheerfully, even though babies couldn't understand the word. "Let's do it again. Ready? Here comes Mr. Bear." She did the ear-wiggling thing again, and once more, both girls dissolved into giggles. Alexander must have made a sound, a sharp intake of breath, maybe because Sophia suddenly turned and saw him standing there. Her face registered surprise, and she started to get up. "Mr. Matthews, I didn't hear you come in. I'm sorry, I was just—" "Don't stop," he said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "Please, don't stop." Sophia looked at him uncertainly, then slowly settled back down onto the blanket. "I was just playing with them before their 4 o'clock feeding. I hope it's okay that I brought them to the sunroom. The light is so beautiful in here, and I thought—" "It's fine," Alexander interrupted, stepping into the room. His legs felt weak, and he sank down into Catherine's favorite armchair, the one with the view of the garden, the one he hadn't sat in since she died. They were laughing. "Yes," Sophia said, her face brightening. "Emma started it about an hour ago. I was just making faces while I was changing her diaper, and suddenly she just giggled. Then I brought them both down here, and Lily joined in. They've been laughing on and off for the past half hour." 9 months. 9 months of silence, of solemn little faces, of going through the mechanics of childcare without joy. And this woman had been here for barely 24 hours and had brought laughter into his home.
How?
The word came out as barely a whisper. "How did you do it?" Sophia tilted her head, considering the question. "I didn't really do anything special, Mr. Matthews. I just played with them. Babies need more than just having their physical needs met. They need interaction, silliness, engagement. They need to feel joy." She paused, and Alexander could see her weighing her next words carefully. "If it's okay for me to say this, I think maybe everyone has been so focused on the sadness in this house that they forgot babies don't understand grief yet. They just know what's present in their environment. And if all that's present is sadness and silence, that's what they absorb." Alexander felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "I failed them," he said, the words tasting like ash. "I've been so lost in missing Catherine that I forgot they need a father who's actually present, not just someone who makes sure they're fed and clothed." "You didn't fail them," Sophia said firmly, and there was no pity in her eyes, just honest compassion. "You were grieving. You are grieving. That's not failure, Mr. Matthews. That's being human. But these little girls," she gestured to Emma and Lily, who were now examining their own feet with intense concentration, "they need you to find your way back to living. Not for Catherine's memory, but for them. For yourself." Emma chose that moment to look up at her father. Those blue eyes, so heartbreakingly like her mother's, met his, and suddenly she smiled. Not the vague, random expressions newborns make, but a real smile, directed at him. Her little arms stretched toward him in that universal gesture of a child wanting to be held. Alexander's vision blurred with tears as he stood and crossed the small distance to the blanket. He knelt down and carefully picked up Emma, cradling her against his chest. She was so much bigger than he remembered. When had that happened? She fit against him perfectly, her head resting in the crook of his neck, and she made a little contented sound that shattered what was left of his carefully constructed walls. "Hi, sweetheart," he whispered into her soft hair. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I haven't been there for you. But I'm here now. I'm here." Lily, not wanting to be left out, let out a little cry. Sophia gently picked her up and held her out to Alexander. "She wants her daddy too." With Emma still in one arm, Alexander managed to settle Lily in his other arm. It was awkward. He'd never tried to hold both of them at once, but somehow he made it work. They were warm and solid and real, and they smelled like baby powder and that indefinable sweet scent that only babies have. Emma reached up and grabbed his tie, and Lily's tiny hand found his collar, and Alexander began to cry in earnest. "They're beautiful," Sophia said softly. "And they have the best parts of both of you. Catherine's eyes, your determination. She'd be so proud of them." "She'd be disappointed in me," Alexander said, the guilt he'd been carrying spilling out. "She'd see how I've been sleepwalking through their lives, and she'd understand." Sophia interrupted gently but firmly. "She'd understand because she loved you, and she would know that you were doing the best you could with an impossible situation. But I think she'd also want you to know that it's time. Time to really live again for these little girls who need their father." Alexander looked down at his daughters. Emma was now trying to eat his tie, and Lily was making little cooing sounds, her eyes beginning to droop, a sign she was getting sleepy. They were depending on him for everything, and he'd been so caught up in his own grief that he'd been giving them the minimum instead of the maximum. "Will you help me?" he asked Sophia, looking up at her. "Not just as a nanny. Will you help me learn how to do this? How to be the father they deserve?" Sophia smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had annoyed him yesterday, but that now felt like a lifeline. "That's why I'm here, Mr. Matthews. That's exactly why I'm here." Over the next few days, the mansion began to transform in subtle but profound ways. Alexander found himself coming home earlier each day, drawn by the sounds of Sophia's voice, the music she played, and, most incredibly, his daughter's laughter. The house that had been silent as a crypt was becoming alive again. On Wednesday evening, Alexander arrived home at 5 o'clock, unheard of for someone who usually worked until 8 or 9. He found Sophia in the nursery, singing a Spanish lullaby while changing Lily's diaper. Emma was in her crib, bouncing on her bottom and babbling along with the melody. "You're home early," Sophia said, looking up with surprise as he appeared in the doorway. "I wanted to help with the bedtime routine," Alexander said, feeling slightly awkward. "If that's okay. I've never actually. I've done parts of it, but I've never done the whole thing." Sophia's face lit up. "Of course it's okay. It's wonderful. Here, you finish with Lily while I get Emma, and then we'll do their bath together." Bath time turned out to be an adventure. Alexander had avoided it before, letting the nannies handle it because it seemed complicated and he was afraid of doing something wrong. But with Sophia's patient guidance, he learned how to test the water temperature, how to support Lily's head while gently washing her squirming little body, and how to make it fun rather than just functional. "See," Sophia said, demonstrating with Emma. "If you splash just a tiny bit like this, they love it." She made a small splash and Emma squealed with delight, her hands slapping the water. Alexander tried it with Lily, and his daughter's face transformed into pure joy. She kicked her legs and laughed that magical baby laugh, and Alexander found himself laughing too, really laughing for the first time in 9 months. "I never knew it could be like this," he admitted as they wrapped the girls in fluffy towels afterward. "I thought it was just a task to complete." But they actually enjoyed that. "Everything's better when it comes with love and attention," Sophia said simply. "These little ones can feel when you're present versus when you're just going through the motions. You were present just now, and they knew it." After the girls were in their pajamas, Sophia suggested something that made Alexander's chest tighten. "Why don't you read to them? It's part of the routine I've been building. Just 10 minutes before bed, a story or two. It helps them wind down, and they love hearing voices." Alexander's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't know how to read to babies. What if he did it wrong? What if they cried? But Sophia was already placing Emma in his arms and settling Lily beside him in the nursing chair, and suddenly, he had both daughters looking up at him with trust in their eyes. Sophia handed him a board book, "Good Night, Moon," and quietly left the room, giving him privacy for this moment with his children. Alexander's voice shook as he read the first page. In the great green room, there was a telephone and a red balloon. Emma's little hand reached up and touched the book, patting the picture. Lily's eyes were wide, tracking his face as he spoke. He kept reading, his voice growing stronger, and by the end of the book, something miraculous happened. Emma yawned, a huge baby yawn, and nestled closer to him. When he emerged from the nursery 20 minutes later, after successfully putting both girls down for the night, Sophia was waiting in the hallway with a smile. "How did it go?" "They fell asleep," Alexander said, wonder in his voice. "They actually fell asleep while I was holding them. They've never done that with me before." "That's because you were really there with them tonight," Sophia said. "Not thinking about work or grief or anything else. Just being their dad." Alexander ran a hand through his hair, suddenly feeling exhausted, but in a different way than usual. It was a good exhaustion, earned rather than the bone-deep weariness of depression. "Coffee," he offered. "I feel like I owe you more than just a paycheck for what you're doing here." They ended up in the kitchen, another room Alexander had barely used since Catherine's death, preferring to have the household staff leave prepared meals for him to eat in his study. But now he found himself making coffee while Sophia pulled out the ingredients for a quick dinner. "You don't have to cook," he protested. "That's not part of your job description." "I know," Sophia said, already chopping vegetables with practiced ease. "But I'm hungry. You probably haven't eaten, and cooking relaxes me. Besides, your mother mentioned you've lost weight. Someone needs to make sure you're taking care of yourself too." As they worked side by side, Sophia cooking, Alexander setting the table, and trying to help without getting in the way. They talked. Really talked for the first time. Alexander learned that Sophia had grown up in Queens, the oldest of 5 children, which explained her natural ease with babies. She'd studied early childhood development at Hunter College, working multiple jobs to pay her way through. She'd been a nanny for several families, but had taken the last 6 months off to care for her own mother who'd been ill. "Is your mother okay now?" Alexander asked, concerned. "Yes, thank God," Sophia said, stirring the vegetables in the pan. "She had pneumonia, and it was scary for a while, but she's tough. Tougher than she looks." She smiled. "Kind of like your daughters. They've been through something no baby should have to go through, starting life without their mother, but they're resilient. They just needed someone to show them it's okay to be happy anyway." "Tell me about them," Alexander said suddenly. "About what you've noticed. I feel like I've missed so much of their first 9 months, and I want to know who they're becoming." Sophia's face brightened. "Well, Emma is the bolder one. She's the first to try new things, the first to reach for a toy. She's got this determined set to her jaw. She gets that from you, I think. When she wants something, she goes for it. Lily is more cautious, more observant. She likes to watch Emma try things first, and then she'll do it herself. But Lily's the cuddler. She loves to be held, loves physical affection." Alexander hung on every word, hungry for this knowledge of his daughters. How had he not noticed these things himself? "Emma likes the mobile over her crib, the one with the stars," Sophia continued. "She'll stare at it for 15 minutes straight, like she's trying to figure out how it works. And Lily loves music. Any kind of music, but especially when I sing to her in Spanish. Her face just lights up." "Catherine loved music too," Alexander said softly. "She played piano. We have a piano in the music room that hasn't been touched since." He trailed off. "Maybe one day you could play for them," Sophia suggested gently. "If you play. Even if you don't, maybe just having music in the house again would be good. For all of you." They ate dinner together at the kitchen table, simple stir-fry and rice, but it was the best meal Alexander had tasted in months. Maybe because it was the first one he hadn't eaten alone. Maybe because, for the first time, he was choosing to be present in his life instead of hiding from it. "Thank you," he said as they cleared the dishes. "For everything. For bringing laughter back into this house. For helping me see what I was missing." Sophia paused, dish towel in hand. "Mr. Matthews, can I be honest with you about something?"
"Please."
"And call me Alexander." "Alexander," she said, testing out his name. "Your mother told me about Catherine, about what happened. And I want you to know that I'm not trying to replace her. I could never do that. But I also want you to know that it's okay to move forward. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring her memory by giving your daughters the full, joyful life she would have wanted for them." Alexander felt tears prick his eyes again. "I'm afraid," he admitted. "I'm afraid that if I stop being sad, it means I didn't love her enough. That I'm betraying her somehow." "Love doesn't end just because grief does," Sophia said softly. "Catherine lives on in those 2 beautiful girls upstairs. Every time Emma shows that determination, every time Lily seeks comfort, that's Catherine. You'll never lose her as long as you're present for them. But you have to let yourself live, Alexander.
For them.
For yourself. And maybe, eventually, for Catherine's memory, because I bet she'd want you to be happy." That night, after Sophia had gone home to her own apartment in Brooklyn, Alexander did something he hadn't done since Catherine died. He went into the music room, pulled the dust cover off the piano, and sat down. His fingers found the keys, and he began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Catherine's favorite piece. He played through his tears, the notes filling the empty house with something other than silence. And when he finished, he could have sworn he felt Catherine's presence, not as a ghost or a source of pain, but as a gentle blessing. Permission to keep going. Permission to be happy again, even though she was gone. Upstairs, through the baby monitor, he heard Lily stir and then settle again. His daughters were sleeping peacefully, and for the first time in 9 months, so would he. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but over the following weeks, the Matthews household became something it had never been before, a home. Alexander found himself restructuring his entire life around his daughters, something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. He started working from home 3 days a week, taking calls from his home office while Sophia cared for the girls nearby. The sound of their babbling and occasional crying no longer distracted him. Instead, it anchored him. One November morning, Alexander came downstairs to find Sophia in the living room with both girls, who were now 10 months old and getting more active by the day. She'd spread out a collection of cushions and soft toys, creating a safe exploration zone. Emma was pulling herself up on the edge of the coffee table, something Alexander had never seen her do, while Lily was contentedly examining a soft book, bringing it to her mouth to taste it. "Watch this," Sophia said excitedly when she noticed Alexander. "Emma, show Daddy what you can do." As if understanding, Emma let go of the coffee table for just a moment, standing unsupported for 3 whole seconds before plopping down on her padded bottom. She looked shocked by her own accomplishment, then pleased, and then burst into proud giggles. Alexander felt his heart swell, almost painfully. "She's standing. When did this start?" "Yesterday," Sophia said, beaming. "I was going to call you, but I thought it would be better to surprise you. She's so close to walking, Alexander. Another month, maybe 2, and both of them will be on the move." Alexander sank down onto the floor beside them, heedless of his expensive suit. Emma immediately crawled over to him, and he scooped her up, kissing her forehead. "You're getting so big, sweetheart. Soon you'll be running around this whole house." "Actually," Sophia said, a hint of hesitation in her voice, "I wanted to talk to you about that. About the house." Alexander looked up, Lily now crawling into his lap to join her sister. "What about it?" "It's beautiful," Sophia said carefully. "But it's like a museum, Alexander. Everything is white and pristine and breakable. As the girls get more mobile, it's going to be impossible to keep them safe without saying no 100 times a day. Have you thought about maybe making some spaces more child-friendly?" Alexander looked around the living room. The white carpet that showed every mark, the glass coffee table with sharp corners, the expensive artwork within reach, the delicate antique vases. Catherine had decorated this room with an interior designer, aiming for elegant sophistication. It had never been designed with children in mind. "What would you suggest?" he asked, and the fact that he was asking rather than dismissing showed how far he'd come. Sophia's face lit up. "Well, we could start with this room. Maybe replace the coffee table with something rounded and softer. Get some colorful rugs that can handle spills and stains. Move the breakables up high and bring in some storage for toys so the girls can start learning to play in a space that's actually theirs. And the sunroom, we could turn that into a real playroom. It's already where we spend most of our time." The sunroom was Catherine's favorite room, Alexander said automatically, the old protective instinct rising up. Sophia met his eyes with gentle understanding. "I know. And I think that's exactly why it should be the girls' playroom. Not a shrine to the past, but a living, breathing space where her daughters can grow and laugh and play." Catherine loved that room because it was full of life and light. The girls love it for the same reason. It's a beautiful way to honor her memory by filling it with the joy of her children. Alexander felt the truth of her words settling into his bones. She was right. Catherine would have hated the way he'd been treating the house, like a mausoleum, untouchable and frozen in time. She'd always been so full of life, so spontaneous. She would have wanted their home to be lived in, not preserved. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it. All of it. Whatever you think the girls need." Over the next 2 weeks, the mansion underwent a metamorphosis. Alexander took a few days off work, something he never did, to be part of the process. They transformed the sunroom into a wonderland for babies, soft mats covering the floor, age-appropriate toys organized in low bins, a small ball pit in one corner, and the walls decorated with cheerful decals of animals and flowers. They kept Catherine's plants, moving them to higher shelves where they'd be safe from curious hands, but still filling the room with green life. The living room became more practical while maintaining its beauty. The white carpet was rolled up and stored, replaced with colorful, washable rugs. The glass coffee table was swapped for a padded ottoman. Safety gates appeared at strategic locations. And slowly, carefully, Alexander began bringing out photos of Catherine and displaying them throughout the house. Not hidden away, where looking at them hurt too much, but present so the girls would grow up knowing their mother's face. One afternoon, as they were hanging a large portrait of Catherine in the playroom, Alexander found himself telling Sophia stories about how Catherine had been terrible at cooking but insisted on trying anyway, about her habit of breaking into dance in the middle of the grocery store, about her infectious laugh that could fill a room. "She sounds like she was an amazing person," Sophia said, adjusting the frame until it was perfectly level. "She was," Alexander agreed. "And you're right. She would have wanted this. She would have wanted the house full of laughter and mess and life. I've been so focused on my pain that I forgot she'd want us to be happy." "You'll never forget her," Sophia said softly. "That's not what this is about. But you can remember her with joy instead of just sadness. You can tell Emma and Lily stories about their incredible mother while also giving them an incredible father." That evening, after the girls were in bed, Alexander made a decision. He asked Sophia to stay for dinner, something that had become routine, but this time, he had something specific he wanted to discuss. "I've been thinking," he said as they sat at the kitchen table with Chinese takeout spread between them. "You've done so much more than just be a nanny to the girls. You've helped me become a father again. You've brought this house back to life. And I want to make sure you know how much that means to me." "Alexander, I'm just doing my job." "No," he interrupted.
You're doing so much more than that.
"And I want to make you an offer. I'd like you to move into the house.
Permanently.
Not just as a nanny, but as, I don't know what to call it, part of the family? The girls adore you, and honestly, I don't know what I'd do without you at this point." Sophia looked stunned. "Move in?" "Alexander, I don't know if that's appropriate. I mean, people might think." "I don't care what people think," Alexander said firmly. "I care about my daughters having consistency and love. I care about not having to worry every day that you might take another job. There's a guest house on the property that's completely separate. You'd have your own space, your own privacy. But you'd be here, part of their daily lives. And I'd triple your salary." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the pattern on her napkin. "Can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course." "Are you asking me this because of the girls? Or is there another reason?" Alexander met her eyes and saw the question there, the awareness that something had been shifting between them, that their relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee into something more complex. But he also saw her caution, her concern about crossing lines. "I'm asking because of the girls," he said honestly. "Because they need you. But I'd be lying if I said that was the only reason. Sophia, you've helped me find my way back to living. You've been patient with me, kind to my daughters, and you've brought light back into this house. I value your presence here more than I can express. But I want to be clear, this offer comes with no expectations beyond what we have now. I'm not asking for anything more than you're willing to give. I'm just asking you to stay." Sophia's eyes were bright with tears. "I love those girls," she said softly. "I've loved them from the first day. And I've seen you transform from someone who is just surviving into someone who's actually living again. That's been the greatest privilege of my life.
So yes.
Yes, I'll stay." Sophia moved into the guest house the week before Thanksgiving. It was a charming 2-bedroom cottage at the edge of the property, with its own kitchen and garden space. She'd been worried it might feel isolated, but instead, it felt like having the best of both worlds, her own private sanctuary, but close enough to the main house that she could be there in 2 minutes if the girls needed her. The morning after she moved in, Alexander knocked on her door at 6:30 a.m., looking apologetic. "Lily's running a fever," he said, worry etched on his face. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I've never dealt with a sick baby before, and I'm not sure if I should be calling the pediatrician or if this is normal or—" "Let me grab my things," Sophia said, already reaching for her cardigan. Together, they went to the main house, and Sophia showed Alexander how to check Lily's temperature properly, when to worry and when not to worry, and how to make a sick baby comfortable. It was just a minor cold, nothing serious, but Alexander's gratitude was profound. I'm so glad you're here, he said as they kept watch over a fussy Lily at 3 in the morning, taking turns rocking her. I don't know how single parents do this alone. They do it because they have to, Sophia said. But you don't have to do it alone, Alexander. That's what I'm here for. Thanksgiving arrived, and with it, Margaret Matthews. She'd been visiting every few weeks, monitoring her son's progress with the satisfaction of someone whose plan had worked perfectly. When she saw the transformed house, the playroom full of toys, the photos of Catherine displayed lovingly, and most importantly, the light back in her son's eyes, she pulled Sophia aside. You've worked a miracle here, Margaret said, her eyes misting. When I first hired you, I hoped you could help with the girls. I never imagined you'd give me my son back too. Alexander did that himself, Sophia replied. He just needed someone to remind him why it was worth trying. The Thanksgiving dinner was small, just Alexander, Sophia, Margaret, and Alexander's younger sister Rachel, who flew in from California. Emma and Lily were in high chairs at the table, making a glorious mess with mashed sweet potatoes and entertaining everyone with their babbling conversations with each other. As Alexander carved the turkey, he found himself overwhelmed with gratitude. A year ago, he'd been planning a Thanksgiving with Catherine, excitedly preparing for the babies who would arrive in a few weeks. He'd lost that future, and the grief of it had nearly destroyed him. But now, looking around the table at the people gathered here, at his daughters thriving and happy, he realized he'd found something he never expected, a different kind of family, one built not on biology alone but on choice, on care, on showing up day after day. I'd like to say something, he announced, setting down the carving knife. Everyone looked at him, and he felt suddenly self-conscious, but pushed forward anyway. This year has been the hardest of my life. I lost Catherine, and I lost myself for a while too. But I want you all to know how grateful I am, Mom, for refusing to let me give up. Rachel, for being there even from across the country. And Sophia. He looked at her, seeing her eyes bright with emotion. Sophia, for giving my daughter's laughter, and for reminding me that it's possible to honor the past while still living in the present. Thank you. To family, Margaret said, raising her glass. In all its forms. They toasted, and Emma chose that moment to fling a handful of sweet potato, which landed squarely on Alexander's white shirt. There was a beat of silence, and then everyone burst into laughter, including Alexander, who scooped up his daughter and kissed her messy face. That's my girl, he said. Living life to the fullest, just like your mama. That night, after Margaret and Rachel had left and the girls were asleep, Alexander and Sophia sat in the living room with coffee, exhausted but content. The house was a mess, toys everywhere, food still needing to be put away, dishes in the sink, but Alexander didn't mind. It looked like life, like a home where people actually lived. Can I ask you something? Sophia said, curled up in the armchair with her hands wrapped around her mug. Anything. Do you ever feel guilty about being happy again? Alexander considered the question. Sometimes, he admitted. There are moments when I laugh at something Emma does, or when I'm playing with Lily and I think, Catherine should be here for this. And I feel guilty that I'm experiencing this joy without her. But then I remember what you said, that moving forward isn't betraying her. It's honoring her. She'd want the girls to have a happy father, not one who's frozen in grief. She'd be proud of you, Sophia said softly. I never knew her, but from everything you've told me, from the photos and the stories, she'd be so proud of the father you've become. I couldn't have done it without you, Alexander said, meeting her eyes. You've given us all so much, Sophia. I hope you know that. There was a moment, a charged, significant moment, when something unspoken hung in the air between them. Sophia looked away first, setting down her mug. I should go. Early morning tomorrow, the girls will be up at 6, demanding breakfast and entertainment. Sophia, Alexander said as she stood to leave. She paused, looking back at him. I just want you to know, you're not just an employee here. You're not even just a friend. You're family. To me and to the girls. I hope that's okay. Sophia's smile was warm and genuine, with just a hint of something more complicated behind it. It's more than okay, Alexander. It's everything. December brought cold weather, early sunsets, and the question of Christmas. Alexander hadn't celebrated the previous year. Catherine had died just weeks before the holiday, and he'd spent Christmas Day sitting in his study, numb and alone while a hired nanny cared for the days-old twins. The thought of facing another Christmas had been filling him with dread. But Sophia had other ideas. "The girls need Christmas," she announced one morning in early December. "Not for them. They won't remember it. But for the tradition of it. For the photos we'll show them later. For establishing that this family celebrates life." Alexander wanted to protest, to say it was too soon, but he was learning to trust Sophia's instincts about what his family needed. So he agreed, and suddenly the house was being transformed again, this time with garlands and lights, a massive tree in the living room, and decorations that the girls could safely touch and explore. On the day they decorated the tree, Margaret and Rachel came over to help. They made an afternoon of it, with Christmas music playing and hot chocolate, which Emma tried and made a hilarious, disgusted face at, much to everyone's amusement. Alexander held the girls up one at a time to hang ornaments on the lower branches, their little hands grasping the shiny objects with wonder. "Catherine would have loved this," Rachel said softly, hanging a delicate glass angel. "She was always so extra about Christmas. Remember that year she made you dress up as Santa for the neighborhood kids?" Alexander laughed at the memory. "I was terrible at it. Kept forgetting my ho-ho-hos, but she was so happy. I couldn't say no." "Tell us more," Sophia encouraged, Emma on her hip. "What other Christmases do you remember?" As they decorated, Alexander found himself sharing stories. Catherine's love of matching pajamas, her terrible Christmas cookies that looked beautiful but tasted like cardboard, her tradition of donating to toy drives and volunteering at shelters. The memories didn't hurt the way they used to. Instead, they felt like gifts he was giving his daughters, ways of keeping their mother's spirit alive. That evening, after everyone had left and the girls were in bed, Alexander did something he'd been avoiding. He went up to the attic where he'd boxed away Catherine's belongings, unable to deal with them in the immediate aftermath of her death. He brought Sophia with him, needing her steady presence. The boxes were exactly as he'd left them 9 months ago. He opened the first one carefully, and Catherine's scent, her perfume, faint but still there, nearly brought him to his knees. Sophia's hand found his back, steadying him. "We don't have to do this now," she said gently. "No," Alexander said, his voice thick. "I need to. The girls should have things of their mothers. Not locked away up here, where no one can see them." They went through the boxes together. Catherine's jewelry. Alexander set aside pieces that could be saved for the girls when they were older. Her collection of scarves, silk and cashmere in beautiful colors. Her books, with notes in the margins. Her photo albums from childhood. And then Alexander found it, a large envelope with his name written on it in Catherine's handwriting. His hands shook as he opened it, and Sophia quietly stepped back, giving him privacy. Inside were letters. Multiple letters, addressed to different people. One to Alexander. One to my daughters. One to the woman who helps raise my girls. Alexander's vision blurred as he read his letter first. Catherine had written it in the hospital, after the high-risk pregnancy had been diagnosed, when they'd known there might be complications. "My dearest Alexander, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to grow old with you, and that breaks my heart more than I can express. But I want you to know something important. You are the love of my life, and our time together was perfect. Not because it was easy or without challenges, but because we chose each other every day. I need you to promise me something. Promise me you won't let grief consume you. Promise me you'll be there for our daughters, really there, not just physically present but emotionally available. Promise me you'll laugh with them, make mistakes with them, and let them know every single day that they are loved beyond measure. And Alexander, promise me you'll live. When you're ready, and you'll know when that is, I want you to open your heart again. Our daughters will need more than just one parent. They'll need someone who can love them like I would have.
Don't feel guilty about that.
I want you to be happy. I want you to find joy again. That's not betraying me. That's honoring the love we shared by letting it multiply instead of dying with me. You're going to be an amazing father. I already know this because I've seen how gentle you are, how thoughtful, how much you care. Our girls are so lucky to have you. Make sure they know it. I love you forever, Catherine. Alexander was openly sobbing now, the letter clutched in his hands. Sophia had moved to sit beside him, her own tears falling silently. He handed her the letter addressed to the woman who helps raise my girls, and she read it with shaking hands. To whoever you are, I don't know your name or what you look like, but I know you must be special for Alexander to trust you with our daughters.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping into a role that should have been mine. Thank you for wiping their tears, celebrating their milestones, and loving them when I can't.
Please tell them about me.
Not just the facts, but the feeling of me. Tell them I loved to dance in the rain, that I snorted when I laughed too hard, that I cried during commercials. Make me real to them, so they understand that they came from love. And please take care of Alexander too. He's stubborn and he'll try to handle everything alone, but he needs support just as much as the girls do. Be patient with him. He's doing his best in an impossible situation. I don't know what your relationship with my family will be, but I hope you know how grateful I am for your presence in their lives. You're giving them something I can't, and that's the greatest gift anyone could give. With gratitude and love, Catherine. Sophia's hands were shaking as she finished reading. Alexander, I can't. She knew, Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. Somehow she knew that there would be someone who would help me find my way back, that the girls would need more than just me. They sat in the attic for a long time, surrounded by boxes of memories and Catherine's words hanging in the air between them. Finally, Sophia spoke. She was an extraordinary person. She was, Alexander agreed. And she'd like you. I know she would. You're doing exactly what she asked. You're making her real to the girls. You're helping me be the father I need to be, and you're bringing joy back into this house. I hope I'm worthy of that, Sophia said softly. You are, Alexander said with certainty. You absolutely are. They brought several boxes down from the attic that night. They found a beautiful wooden box for Catherine's jewelry, photographs to frame and display, her collection of children's books to read to the girls. The letter addressed to my daughters they sealed in a special envelope, to be given to Emma and Lily when they were old enough to understand. Christmas morning arrived with snow falling softly outside. Alexander was up early, having spent the previous evening assembling what felt like 1,000 plastic toys. He'd gone overboard, he knew it, but he wanted the girls' first real Christmas to be magical. Sophia arrived from the guest house to find him sitting on the floor in pajamas, surrounded by wrapped presents and looking slightly overwhelmed. I may have bought too much, he admitted. She laughed, that warm, genuine laugh that had become one of his favorite sounds. Just a little, but it comes from a good place. They got the girls up together, bringing them downstairs in their matching Christmas pajamas, a tradition Sophia had insisted on, saying Catherine would have wanted it. Emma and Lily were more interested in the wrapping paper than the actual gifts, which made everyone laugh. They crawled around the living room, creating chaos and joy in equal measure. Margaret arrived mid-morning with Rachel and Rachel's new boyfriend. They had brunch together, and for the first time in 2 years, Alexander's house felt truly alive. There was laughter and conversation, music playing, babies babbling, and the mess that comes with life being fully lived. As afternoon turned to evening and the guests prepared to leave, Margaret pulled Alexander aside. I'm proud of you, she said simply. You've come so far. I had help, Alexander replied, glancing at where Sophia was on the floor with the girls, showing them how to stack soft blocks. Margaret followed his gaze and smiled knowingly. She's special. Don't let her get away. After everyone left, Alexander and Sophia tackled the mountain of wrapping paper and toys while the girls napped. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people have moved beyond small talk and into genuine companionship. Thank you, Alexander said as they collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but happy. For pushing me to do this. For making this day special. For everything. You don't have to keep thanking me, Sophia said, but she was smiling. I'm exactly where I want to be. Are you? Alexander asked, And there was something in his tone that made Sophia look at him more carefully. Because I've been thinking about what my mother said about not letting you get away. And about Catherine's letter. About opening my heart again when I'm ready. Sophia's breath caught. Alexander. I'm not saying I'm completely ready, he said honestly. I'm not saying I don't still have grief to work through, or that I don't still miss Catherine every day. But I am saying that you've become incredibly important to me.
To us.
And it's more than just gratitude for what you do for the girls. It's you. Who you are, how you see the world, how you've helped me find my way back to living. I don't want to be a replacement, Sophia said carefully. I could never be Catherine, and I wouldn't want to try. You're not a replacement, Alexander said firmly. You're something entirely different. You're Sophia, and you're wonderful in your own right. I'm just saying, when I think about the future now, I can't imagine it without you in it. Not as the nanny, or even as a friend. As something more. Maybe not today, or even tomorrow, but eventually. If you could ever see us that way. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, and Alexander felt his heart pounding, terrified he'd pushed too far too fast. But then she reached out and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. I've been falling in love with this family, she said softly. With Emma and Lily and their resilience and joy. With this house and how it's become a home. And yes, Alexander, with you. With your strength and your vulnerability, with how you've fought your way back from the darkness, with the father you've become. But I never wanted to presume, never wanted to think that what I was feeling might be returned. It is, Alexander said, squeezing her hand. It absolutely is. I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to see where this goes. To maybe eventually become not just part of this family, but the heart of it. Sophia leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat there as darkness fell outside and snow continued to fall. Two people who'd found each other in the aftermath of loss, building something new and beautiful from the ashes of grief. Upstairs, through the baby monitor, they heard Emma babbling in her sleep and Lily's answering coo. Their daughters, because Sophia had become as much their mother as anyone could be without biology, were safe and happy and loved. I'd like that, Sophia finally answered. I'd like that very much. One day at a time, letting it unfold naturally, but yes. I can see a future with all of you. Alexander kissed the top of her head, gentle and chaste but full of promise. Then, that's what we'll do. We'll take it one day at a time, together. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside the mansion that had been a mausoleum and was now a home, a new family was being born. Not born from traditional means, but from choice and care, and the courage to love again after loss. Catherine's portrait smiled down from the wall, and somewhere, Alexander liked to think, she was smiling too, pleased that her final wishes had been fulfilled. Her daughters were laughing, her husband was living, and her family was whole again, just in a different form than anyone had expected. The end was really just a beginning. Emma and Lily would grow up knowing their mother through stories and photos and love, but they'd also know Sophia's steady presence, her silly songs, her patient guidance. Alexander would continue to heal, allowing joy back into his life, while never forgetting the woman who'd first taught him what love meant. And Sophia would build a life she'd never imagined, not as someone's employee, but as someone's partner, someone's co-parent, someone's love. It wasn't the future any of them had planned. But sometimes the best futures are the ones we never saw coming, built brick by brick from the courage to try again, to love again, to laugh again, even after loss. And it all started with one simple thing. A billionaire who'd forgotten how to live hearing his daughters laugh for the first time and realizing that was the sound of his life beginning again.